good morning, good morning, and thank you for joining me on yet another episode of the Roundtable Talk Show. I am your host, Sharifa Hardy, and I have brought together a great group of people today. I am so excited about the show we have, and sometimes I get excited for different reasons, but today I'm excited because I love the opportunity to introduce you to some of the panelists we will be having on the New Year, New You 2-day teleconference on December 29th and 30th. And that's what we're doing here today. But before we go ahead and introduce our guests, I'm going to ask you to do what I always ask you to do, and that is to go ahead and be an evangelist for the Roundtable Talk Show. Find someone somewhere who needs to watch this show, who needs to get this information. So while you're grabbing your notebook or your recorder, go out and tell a friend, text them, tweet them, inbox them, whatever you have to do. But the information that we share each morning, weekdays at 8 a.m., is so valuable, you do not want to miss it. So while you're doing that, I'm going to go ahead and introduce my first guest, and you will see her at the New Year, New You 2-day teleconference, Miss Alicia Daugherty. She is the founder and principal of Alicia Daugherty Coaching LLC, a leadership and executive coaching practice. She launched her practice after retiring from Comcast Cable as a vice president, consumer experience transformation. Good morning, Alicia. How are you?
Good morning, Sharifa. I'm great. How are you?
I'm excited to finally have this little chat. We've been going back and forth for weeks in email, and I finally get to meet you. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
That's great. Well, thank you so much. I'm super excited. I've watched a number of episodes, and this is always just a great conversation. So I'm really happy to be part of it. So I spent 30 years in corporate America. Started off as an engineer in nuclear power plants, and then worked my way through various different roles, a couple of different industries, and had great jobs, great career. But as a leader, the most meaningful thing to me was working with people to develop their leadership skills, to help them become their best selves, to find out what was possible. And 20 some years ago, I had the opportunity to work with an executive coach and decided at that moment, when I retire from full-time employment, what I want to do is be an executive coach. I want to help people the way this woman helped me. And so I carried that story around. I talked about it for many years. Finally, a group of very dear friends started to ask me, like, what are you waiting for? Why are you saying when I retire? That's still several years away at that point. Why don't you do it now? And so I thought about it, hemmed, hawed, and then finally decided I'm going to go get the training. I'm going to go get the cert. I'm going to keep working and finish out my career, and then I'll have something to step forward and step into. And so I started that training last fall, and then the coronavirus hit. And I had been commuting 4 hours a day to Center City, Philadelphia, doing a job that I loved, but was taking a toll. And so when I had the opportunity to work from home full time and had 4 extra hours in my day, I took the time to do more coaching, to learn more about it, and to really kind of contemplate what's really important to me. What am I doing with my time? What goal am I chasing that I'm going to work another 5 years for what? And then my father had a stroke in June.
Oh, wow, I'm sorry to hear that.
Doing well. He's doing very well. He's in a
Wonderful.
lovely facility where he's very well cared for, and he's largely recovered. But what that did at that moment was make me think life is too short. Life is too short to spend it doing something that I wasn't passionate about. I had an opportunity at that moment to kind of redefine the role that I was doing in the company. I could have made it ultimately into anything I wanted it to be within the kind of the large scope of what I had. And what I realized was I didn't want it. I didn't want any of it. It was great work, but it just wasn't great for me anymore. And so I decided the universe is sending me a lot of messages right now. It's time for me to listen. And so that's when I made the decision to retire 5 years ahead of schedule and step into full-time career as a leadership and executive coach. And I kept waiting for like the fear or panic to set in, like, what are you doing? This is not what the plan was. And I haven't had a moment of doubt or fear, which again tells me this is absolutely the right thing to do. So my focus now is working with leaders really at all levels, executives, frontline managers, who are either looking for ways to be more effective in their role, to find more meaning in their work, or to find fulfillment in their work and their life. And what I really try to help people understand is you don't have to grind away. You don't have to feel that kind of low grade dread every day. You don't have to wake up and go, ugh. You can find joy. And it doesn't necessarily mean a huge life change. It doesn't necessarily mean a career change. It could just be a change in perspective. But that's what I really work with my clients on is life is too short. You got to find the fulfillment where you can and shape your life around your vision, your values, and your purpose.
I think that's wonderful. I think that's beautiful. What is the presentation that you'll be doing on the 29th and 30th?
Yeah, so the focus is going to be around courage and resilience. I've had a lot of personal experiences that have helped build my resilience, both as a human and as a leader. And I've got a number of friends who had kind of worked through different things that would create a lot of fear and see courage on the other side. And so I really got super intrigued about this notion of courage and resilience. And how do you face your fear? How do you get through something and come out better the other side? How do you learn from the things that happen in your life versus letting them overtake you? And so I have, I'm very lucky to have a wonderful circle of very gifted friends. And I'll be kind of giving a little profile on each of them and the things that they've done that are courageous. Some of them big, huge life changes, some of them very small actions that were hard at the time, but were a gift to them or to other people. And so, and it's a little bit interactive. So the audience will have an opportunity to kind of think about what drives fear in themselves. How do they kind of find ways to learn to overcome it and to maybe take some steps that they were afraid to take before. So yeah.
I'm looking forward to your presentation as well. I always love seeing the speakers and presenters because one of the things I talk about on all of my shows is that for there's a certain aspect of me that does this for selfish reasons, because I get to learn from the best of the best. And where else can you ask CEOs and executives and influencers and TEDx speakers, the questions that you want to know? So I'll definitely be tuning into your presentation. But I want to go ahead and introduce our next guest, Mr. Nelson Jordan. Nelson is a conversion copywriter, digital marketer, and host of the Working From Home podcast. With more than 10 years experience helping companies grow their revenue, he provides tips, tricks, and strategies for success at his blog, nelson-jordan.com. Good morning, Nelson. How are you?
Hey, Sharifa. Thanks for having me.
You are so welcome. Where are you calling in from?
As you probably heard from my accent, it's not the US. I'm slap bang in the middle of the UK, a gorgeous place called Staffordshire. So yeah, it's pretty much in the center of the country. So if you guys have seen Peaky Blinders or anything like that, we're just slightly further north.
I love it. I love accents and I love little words. My brother lives in Australia and I was teasing him the other day because he was talking to our mother. All our life we're said mother or mom. So, but now at 45, he's like, Mom, hi, Mom. I'm like, Mom, where do we come get Mom? So I like the accents and the change. No, we were speaking to Alicia about leadership and business, and you're a serial entrepreneur, Nelson. How do you get into this field originally?
So I started through marketing, really. So I had this whole kind of dream in my head of what I wanted to do. And I went to university actually to become a PE teacher. After about a couple of weeks, I realized that wasn't for me. I wasn't very suited to it. I kind of liked the creativity that I heard from people in marketing. Both of my cousins worked in marketing at the time. They seemed to have pretty cool jobs. Like one of my cousins was kind of a photo shoot director within marketing for Speedo. So he'd kind of go all over the world in these photo shoots. So I was like, okay, that's pretty cool. Not that I do anything even remotely similar, but it gave me kind of my first, the first kind of interest, I suppose, into it. So I started working with Hitachi, obviously a globally known company. and then thought what I would really like in terms of speeding up my progress, speeding up the amount of marketing knowledge that I can fit in, is working with an agency. Because you go from just working within one organization to, working at one time, I was working with 15 organizations at once. And it just does something remarkable to your progress. You start seeing how different organizations operate with different business models, how to manage different stakeholders at different seniorities. And you also get the chance to implement far more marketing campaigns in different strategies and channels when you're working in an agency than you do in-house. That's just kind of the nature of things. From there, I started off in paid social media. So I was managing paid traffic campaigns. I managed kind of campaigns up to $200,000 worth of spend a month. I moved into PPC. So that's kind of Google ads, basically. So that's your YouTube, your Google Display Network, your search text ads. And then moved into search engine optimization. I've kind of come full circle. And I've moved slightly back to search engine optimization with a lot of the articles I write. But these days I am very much kind of a hybrid version of a conversion copywriter, a content strategist, and kind of that digital marketer as well to some degree.
Very interesting. I like what you had to say. I'm going to come back to you, Nelson. I want to go ahead and introduce my next guest, Miss Stephanie Wagner. Stephanie is a young female entrepreneur in her 20s with her team of all female staff, all around the same age, trying to make the fashion industry more responsible in terms of health and environmental impact. She is starting with face masks, especially since they sit on the face where toxins can be breathed in. It's not just that, though. She is passionate and knowledgeable about the topic and wants to see change. Good morning, Stephanie. How are you?
Good morning. I'm a little upset that I have to follow that beautiful accent.
People always say that. Somebody says something really cool and great, and it's like, now I have to follow that.
I know, I'm just another American, but I'll do what I can to be interesting.
You are interested. I'm already interested by your background for the field. I love it.
Yeah, so as you mentioned, my name's Stephanie. First of all, thank you so much for having me. Basically, I have loved fashion since I can remember. In fact, one of my first words was shoes. And that's really when my parents knew they had a problem on their hands. But I have, since day one, being 15, 16, working at the local mall, I have been involved in the fashion industry since day one. I went on to study fashion design in college and got my bachelor's degree in that. And following graduation, immediately bought a one-way ticket to New York, where I had interned throughout college and moved to the Big Apple. From there, I landed a dream job, what I thought was my dream job with one of my dream designers, and continued to, work 24/7 as you do in New York City, the city that never sleeps. And as I continued this path, I continuously kind of grew a little disheartened. And I started to see this industry that ignited my passion steal my passion away from me. I always say, the movie The Devil Wears Prada.
Okay, wait a minute. That's my movie. That's the movie I have all my interns watch, because I'm like, if you want to understand me, I am The Devil Wears Prada, but when you walk out of here, you will be amazing.
There you go. Well, I 100% agree, but I will say that movie is a fluff piece in comparison. So it's just, there's, a demeanor, kind of this bully mentality. Again, I'm all for strong and building people, but as I worked my way up the ladder and became one of the people who could be more of power, I kind of wanted to change the way the industry ran, and there wasn't an opportunity for that. With that being said, I decided to take a step back and really dig into the industry and kind of figure out how it got to be this way. and try to reclaim my passion a little bit. Because once I pulled back the curtain and I was a part of the show that the industry was putting on, I saw a lot more than just that bully mentality that, again, really did not align with my values. So I read every book I could, watched every documentary I could, really tried to learn as much as I can about where we had come. And once I did that, I grew horrified. I was horrified as to what I learned. I learned that the fashion industry is the second most polluting industry, right behind the oil industry. I learned that not only that, the fashion industry is best friends with the oil industry because 60% of our clothing is made of synthetics, which derive from petroleum. I learned that the fashion industry is the second most polluting industry to our clean waterways. I learned that all of our, only 3% of our clothing that is bought in the US or that is sold in the US is actually made in the US. And of that 3%, only about 1% is even being made ethically. The rest are in sweatshops, even domestically. I also learned overseas, 98% of our clothing that's made, the workers aren't getting paid a fair living wage. And of that 98%, 75% of them are women. And I am a feminist to my core. And that, you know, we see this clothing on the rack, but there are hands behind it. There's people behind it. There's a heart behind it. And, you know, we need to bring those faces to, you know, they need to connect with the clothing we're purchasing. So that's just the tip of the iceberg as far as what the fashion industry is doing. And more so even than that, I learned that there are over 8,000 synthetic chemicals being used in the production of our clothing, none of which are being regulated, and many of which are known allergens, carcinogens, and harmful to human health, not only for the people that are making it and dealing with the chemicals firsthand, but also there are studies showing that it is harmful to our long-term human health. So when
I think it's wonderful. No, I think it's a wonderful topic. It's very interesting. I just watched, I don't know if you've seen it, but have you seen I Am Woman on Netflix?
Yes.
I just watched it last night. And it's like, I see that kind of energy of, I'm not just going to take this lying down. I'm going to do something about it. You have that whole Aaron Brockovich, you know, Helen Reddy kind of energy going to you. So I love it. I know it's going to be an interesting topic for a conversation. I want to go ahead and introduce our next guest, Mr. Fred Amaran. Fred is the founder and CEO of payfored.com. He is a nationally recognized expert in the entire college funding and student loan repayment process. Fred's unique approach helps students and parents envision the financial outcome of a college education. Good morning, Fred. How are you?
Good morning, Sharifa. How are you this morning? It's a pleasure to be here and surrounded by all these great entrepreneurs and leaders. So it's hard to follow up here.
Each one gets better and better. We got to keep following. We're going to let you talk, Fred, but this is what I need to focus on. I need some help with, I'm 44, and I need some help with my student loans. That's what I'm waiting on, for the whole student loans to just be wiped out.
Well, it's that's going to be hard to do. It's actually the second highest debt number that people have in the United States. So first is mortgages, then student loans. So it's such an emotional decision for both the students and parents as they go through this. And it's one of the only decisions that we make on our own from a financial standpoint. So when we look at a mortgage or car payment, there's a third party that says, yes, I will lend you the money. We don't want to restrict access, but we don't see the financial consequences of this as a teenager parent, or the parent of that teenager, or even the adult that's going back to school that, wanted to get the master's degree to make their life better, just an undergraduate degree. A lot of people going back later in life because they're doing career changes. And we don't see the financial consequences because we can defer the debt or the payment of that debt, and we don't recognize how much of an impact it's going to have on our financial life going forward. And that's kind of what we do. We put the transparency that's missing at each stage. So there's three major stages, the way we look at it. So there's the college decision, which is really the high school, student and below, or someone starting out at school. Then you have the people that are in school, both the undergraduate and graduate students that are making ongoing decisions. And when we talk about student debt, everyone hears about the 44, 45, 46 million people. About half of them are still incurring the debt. So there's around 21 million people that are in school that haven't even hit repayment. Only about 22 to 24 million people have student debt. And of that, about half have, serious amounts of debt. But there's a wave of people that are coming that are going to be alarming. And that's one of the big things that's happening on the employment side, is employers are starting to recognize this as a problem. The financial stress issue is in fact impacting the productivity of their employees, all those type of things. And there's a new benefit many of the companies are starting to offer. It's called student loan assistance, which is great. And that's, I guess, one of the other issues that we see with student debt. There's a new trend that's happening that's very different. 56% of student debt now is repaid using what's called an income-driven repayment method. So when we look at a mortgage or car payment, we have a fixed payment, and that has interest and principal, and it goes down every month to when it's over. With income-driven repayment methods, it's based on your income. So too often do I hear from advisors or from old clients — I don't really do clients that much anymore, we're focused on the software — is I've been paying $200-300 a month, but my loan balance keeps on going up. And that's because most people still have a traditional view of loan repayment. And in reality, the loan servicers are trying to help these people stay current, which is very important. But now they're not paying the full interest and their loan balance is going up. So these are things that we bring to the marketplace. We've created — it's a very do-it-yourself environment with videos and webinars, and there's live webinars that people can join in and if they have specific questions. But it really helps everyone, understand what they're doing at each stage, and then also qualifying for the loan forgiveness options if that is part of their financial life.
Very interesting. Going to come back to you, Fred. I want to go back to Stephanie real quick. Fred was talking, and I was talking about my student loans, and Fred was talking about the student loan process and starting your own business in your 20s, stepping out there. Were your student loans a consideration, or the repayment, when you started your business, Stephanie?
No, so I was very fortunate. My parents have kind of instilled the knowledge in me to put aside money, to really budget well and learn how to do this. So yes, always a concern, but I've always wanted to start my own company. So I have, before I even knew what I knew, what I wanted to do, I have an entrepreneurial family. And so I've always kind of set aside money for this venture. So I had I had funds. I haven't raised any capital yet. I'm not going to ask people to invest in me if I won't invest in myself first. So, like I said, I had this planned essentially. So I have different things going on in different places.
I think that's wonderful. Nelson, we're speaking to Stephanie about her business that she's is relatively new. Fred's focus is on his software and on student loans. As a marketing expert, what are your thoughts for both of them?
I mean, that's quite a wide topic, but I'll try and address Stephanie first, just because that's kind of the market that I'm more familiar with. So I work with fashion brands, not so much these days because I'm trying to make a move towards more Fred's business, which is software. So funny how that works. But yeah, in terms of eco fashion, I've actually worked with two eco fashion companies. I've worked with Stripped Cosmetics, who are like a very small UK brand who basically try and use and do succeed in using zero plastics throughout the whole of their the kind of complete journey from production all the way to delivery. So everything that they make, all of their logistics, all of their packaging is completely zero plastic, and that's a fantastic move.
Same for us. We're a zero waste packaging company, so all of our, even our little brown padded mailers. The inside, if you rip it open, it's all recycled newspaper in the inside. And we have zero waste stickers and zero plastic from start to finish.
Fantastic. I mean, that shows that it can be done. And I think the new kind of breed of entrepreneurs and founders that are emerging in the market that I work with and that I see kind of on a daily basis are the people that realize that this old traditional paradigm doesn't have to exist for much longer. So another company that I'm working with that's does a very similar kind of objective as yours is Eco Clothing Company. Again, UK based, but they from kind of start to finish, all of their fabrics are sustainably sourced, sustainably made. All of their dyes are good for the environment, or should I say not harmful for the environment. And all of the workers that worked in their factory, they've spent a lot of energy and time and resources only finding partners where everybody is paid a fair wage. So they take that stuff really seriously. Just a question for you, Stephanie, just on that. Have you found that, you've had to increase your prices or set kind of a minimum of, X amount? I don't know whether you're kind of in the luxury market or you're kind of more kind of common retail.
Yeah, so I think the brands that you just mentioned, are very similar to us. We're trying to lead by example from day one, showing it can and should be done a better way. And you do have to kind of do it from day one because you have to work it into your business model. It's hard to go backwards. So just like you said, our manufacturer, we actually work with the only 100% certified organic manufacturer in the US. He was kind of a mentor to me. And when the pandemic hit and I realized these fabric face masks were going to be going on our face and we were going to be breathing in these chemicals and these microplastics and things directly, I knew that's really when we needed to do something. So that's when I partnered with him to design this mask. All of our workers there are paid 37% above living wage, which is very, very rare, but it's genuinely a what the average American, should be making so they can, live a life without fear of being able to pay their bills and etc. I will also say, as far as directly to your question, I think that there's somewhat of a misconception of sustainability and eco-friendly things, that it always has to be a lot more expensive. What people don't realize is there is fast fashion, which they're, selling things for $1, $2, which is just that's a whole other topic as to why that's bad. But there's also the luxury market, which, as you know, a lot of times you're paying for the label or the company's marketing. So, you can go to Saks Fifth Avenue and find a face mask for $60 that's made of polyester and non-organic dyes, and people weren't paid a fair living wage. And then you can also go to our site and you can get a 2-pack for $35, a 4-pack for $65, or an 8-pack for the family for $120. Yes, it is a little bit more than your average disposable mask, but again, at the same time, everything is a few cents more because we only use organic dyes and we're not using synthetic chemicals. It's a little bit more because we're paying for, plastic's definitely cheaper. That's why everybody makes everything out of plastic and with plastic, but we're paying for all sustainable packaging. So it does tack a little bit onto the price, yeah, but it's usually nothing outrageous. It's just kind of a misconception, and consumers we need to stop just buying things to throw them away. Our mask can be washed over and over again like a t-shirt and is meant to be able to be that go-to grab in your closet for years to come, whenever.
I like that. I like that. What I want to do, and I like the idea of the mask, but I'm ready to get rid of the mask altogether. Like, I want to get out of this new normal, this period of time where we even need a mask. If you're just now tuning in to the Roundtable Talk Show, we are having an incredible conversation about a lot of different topics, from fashion to student loans to marketing to leadership. And if you are just now tuning in, you want to go ahead and share the show with your friends so that they can have this information as well. So, Alicia, one of the things that I read in Stephanie's bio was that she's in her 20s. Most of the people in her company are in their 20s. They're around the same age, females. I think, this is wonderful because it's a new generation of entrepreneurs and business owners. But from someone with 20 or 30 years of experience, do you have any advice for Stephanie?
Well, I mean, everything I've heard, I'm just amazed and impressed with. And I'll say for Stephanie and Nelson, the way you talked about your stories is you kind of went down a path that you thought was the path, realized pretty quickly, nope, that's not it. I'm going to go over here. And I'd love to believe that's kind of a generational thing. So when I was coming up, when most of my peers were coming up, you picked a path, or maybe your path was picked for you, and you just stuck with it. Like, that's what you did. And so what a lot of the work that I do is encouraging people, just because it's what you've done doesn't mean it's what you have to do. Just because it makes sense from a financial standpoint doesn't mean that there aren't better options. Just because you've been successful over here doesn't mean that, is that your definition of success or someone else's? So I just applaud both of you for, I love when Nelson said he started down a path of education and then in 2 weeks realized, like, nope, that's not for me. I mean, lots of kids, young people would just say, well, I'm signed up for this. I don't want to disappoint. I'm going to keep going. So, applause to you for doing that. But I do think certainly people of my generation, and I do think a lot of people in between think that because I'm on this path, it's now carved in stone. And so, the message that clearly the young people on this call have already gotten, and I want to just continue to evangelize, is define success for yourself. What's important to you? And doesn't matter how much money you make or how many employees you have or what title you have. If you don't feel like the work you do is bringing you passion, if you don't feel like the organization that you're part of is aligned with you and your values, change it, do something different. And I have no doubt, Stephanie, you are going to have that change in the industry that you're seeking.
Well, and if you notice, you kept saying, if you don't feel, and that's a huge reason why my company is called For the Feel, because I genuinely feel if we all have a purpose in life, if that's true, that this is mine. And everything that I do, I do for the feel. And I want people to, what they put on, I want them to do it for the way it makes them feel. There is no definition of beauty. There is no definition of these things. It's all a feeling. So, it needs to stop being about the look and start doing it for the feel.
Yeah,
I think that's true, but I also want to go back to what Alicia was saying. I think a lot of it is generational, because prior to my generation, people would be at their jobs for 25, 30, 40 years. They would have that one job. They would be there. They would retire, and that was it. That's just the way things were done. You would get that gold watch, that gold pen, or whatever it is for your retirement. In my generation, that stability hasn't been there. I've been laid off 8 times. So it wasn't always an option of, okay, do I feel like doing this or do I feel like doing this? No, the world changed and job security wasn't what it used to be. So I was forced through necessity to look for other options. And so I think as a society, we started to look at, okay, is this company being loyal to me? So if this company is not going to be loyal to me, what is keeping me there? Because I'm not going to be there for 25 years. So it's not just the salary, it's what am I doing for society, for people as a whole, that's going to keep me coming in, because I no longer get the health benefits. It's not necessarily keeping me there. Fred, what are your thoughts on the conversation?
It's all really interesting. I've put 3 daughters through. I'm the father of 3 daughters, and actually now I have 3 granddaughters, actually. And it's been interesting. And that's kind of our theory. And, as I put my girls through this, having the flexibility and having a plan, I think is, when I hear Stephanie, I think that's what we miss. We kind of react very quickly at times, and we need to sometimes step back, talk to people who've gone down certain paths. I don't, as Alicia was talking about, I grew up in a small family business. My dad, gave me responsibility of an operation of a business at the age of 20 and said, "You're running this for the family." And I'm the oldest of 6. And then did the corporate life for 20 plus years, and then came back and started this. And having a plan and understanding the financial piece of it and making that plan and knowing the ins and outs. And there's a lot of great people like this program that are willing to share and help. And they can get off of that, the background they have, and times change all the way across this. And, there's things that we have to react to, but we also have to have some vision and have options, I guess is the best way to say that, and know what your path could be and where the risks are. One of the best things I did, and this is going to sound weird, is and which I never did before, is play cards with a bunch of guys. And when I realized that was such a learning experience, not just from the enjoyment of being social, but understanding the vision of the risks and rewards and being able to measure that in a different environment is so unique that again, I'm very analytical, but when you sit and do that, it brings a different perspective when you now apply those same type of decision processes in your business. As we're talking about a lot of entrepreneurs here, you have to see what are your options, what are your risks, what are your rewards, and try to pick that best path with, I guess, the other guests I've talked about already, but seeing that vision is so important in today's environment.
I didn't think that was weird at all. I didn't think that was weird at all. I thought that was kind of cool, because it's one of the reasons why I speak to 5 different people a day. You get different perspectives on different things. And for me, talking to so many people, like sometimes if I have an accountant, just say an accountant on one show, and then tomorrow I have an accountant, I'm like, okay, well, the accountant yesterday said this. Then I ask the same question, and you get so many different viewpoints. I think sitting down with a group of guys playing cards, you get a wealth of information. Alicia, you were going to say something?
Yeah, I was going to say that kind of reflection on what you learn from playing cards. I think that's so important to kind of bring that different lens, anything that you're doing in your life, to say, how does this relate to, how can I think about my work challenge differently through this lens? A lot of the work I do is around changing perspective and say, okay, what would your dog have to say about this situation? Just something to change your frame of reference can really have you think about a problem or a challenge differently. So I love that, that's part of like lifelong learning, is always finding and choosing a different perspective on how to look at something.
Yes.
I think from an entrepreneur standpoint, I think measuring your risks and rewards is so important. And seeing where the risks come in. And again, I did the corporate, a pretty senior level of corporate. And what makes them different that most smaller people don't understand when you haven't had that experience is how detailed and how much information a big corporation has to minimize the risk. And they still make a lot of mistakes, but you don't understand. A lot of small entrepreneurs who start out don't realize how much an advantage those big companies have because of the research they do before they make a decision.
Absolutely. And not only just before they make a decision. One of the things that I talk to my clients about is what I call this whole Hail Mary pass idea. With small companies, especially people who, I always tell them, don't quit your day job, save enough. Like Stephanie. Stephanie's a smart cookie. You could tell she's going far. She had resources in the bank. And most people, they're like, okay, I want to quit my day job. I quit that. I want to start my business. And they only have $12 in the bank. So they need a Hail Mary pass in order to be successful. Whereas large companies, they have a war chest, so they can try out different marketing campaigns and different partnerships and different ideas without bankrupting the company. So I always tell people, please have resources in reserve if you want to be successful. Nelson, what are your thoughts on that?
Oh, there's been so many things covered. It's kind of
just pick one, Nelson. Come on.
Know where to start. I will. I think the thing that stood out from Fred's comments to me is the understanding of risk, but I'd kind of like to add to that and say that there's a couple of different types of understanding. There's understanding risk from a technical statistical perspective. So an example of that would be the stat that 1 in 5 businesses doesn't make it past the first year. Okay. But then there's the emotional side and the understanding that emerges from that, and the biases that we have as humans. If you put me in a room with 5 entrepreneurs and say one of your businesses is going to fail, there's less than a 20% chance I think it's going to be me. I think my business is going to succeed. Statistically, that's not the case. You know, there are other really smart people in the room doing the exact same thing, but I don't believe that's the case. So there's a difference between understanding on a statistical level and understanding on an emotional level. And I think we need to get better as humans, you know, with that. There are things that you can do to definitely improve your chances of succeeding. As you've talked about, Sharifa and Stephanie as well, having those kind of resources in the bank means that you can take more risk. The other thing is about taking what I call like a barbell risk. So that's taking a risk in some parts of your life and being very, very safe in other parts. That means that you can go out on a limb. You can, for example, try that business that has a very, very small chance of working, but if it works, will have outsized returns if you're smart about other parts of your life. But the other thing to recognize is that, you know, I'm speaking from an incredibly, incredibly privileged position. You know, I now have the knowledge because of the background, you know, that I have, the fact that I come very squarely from a middle class neighborhood. My mum was a teacher, so always made like a decent salary in the UK. My dad worked for the NHS. So again, you know, made nothing special, but always had a good salary. So I was raised in a home with two parents.
Let me just ask you this, Nelson. I didn't mean to cut you off, but that's what I tend to do, because I didn't want you to go too far off of this point. Because when you talk about the financial aspect, middle class aspect, I think that's great. I think that's wonderful, but that doesn't necessarily always carry over into the emotional aspect. So when you talked about going in a different direction in 2 weeks, you may have looked at your finances, you may have had more in the bank than most people, but emotionally, what was that change like for you?
Yeah, for that decision in particular, I didn't look at my finances at all. I was, that wasn't where my head was at yet. I didn't have any financial knowledge. I'd always worked part-time jobs and a couple of full-time jobs before I got to university. But for me, it was more about just this feeling in my gut that it wasn't right. You know, I looked around, everybody around me.
Sorry. I was gonna say, you do it for the feel, is what you do. Is a feeling, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Stephanie likes that name. She likes that marketing.
It works with everything. I'm telling you, it's the answer to why.
For the feel.
Yeah, but I think
for the feel.
Right there, you go.
But I think that's part of the problem here, is that everyone wants. We've moved to this emotional perspective, I guess, in more of our decisions, and we've lost some of the practicality that we need. And again, I'm an old person talking here, but there's a financial, you know, depending on what I am in college for or whatever, those decisions of what I'm majoring, we live in a supply and demand world. I mean, that's just the reality of it. If I've decided to pick a major that I enjoy and want to be, and that's emotional rewarding to me, but there's no jobs, or the jobs that are available aren't going to pay the debt that I've just taken on, there's a major financial consequence that just adds financial stress, which now I maybe have the job that I want or doing the job that I want, but it's not, there's other financial rewards that I wanted that I can't reach now. And that's the consequence thing that we need to start adding into our decision-making, and not just making it emotional. And that sounds harsh, but that's just reality of it.
I think it doesn't sound harsh at all. I think you're a good granddad, and I think I'm gonna call you every now and then when I need advice, because you bring people down to earth. And it reminds me of a guest that I had on a previous show. He said he has the world's first bachelor's of science in happiness. right? So he's given us this whole spiel on happiness in the world. And so and I tell him, on this show, to be responsible, be a responsible host, I have to ask the hard questions because I know there's some viewer watching who wants to know. So I said, look, my children are 23 and 26 right now. They're 23 and 26. And they came home and they said, Mom, I'm getting a degree in happiness. I don't know how happy I would be, because I'd be like, okay, but who would employ you? Where would you get a job? What would you do with this? So I asked him from a parent perspective what he thought. And he was like, yeah, he took it to his parents, and his parents said basically the same thing, which is why he also got a degree in psychology. So I was like, yeah, I'm with you, Fred. It sounds good, this emotional happiness, warm and fuzzy feeling. But at the end of the day, we still have to be practical. And Stephanie, you had something to say.
Well, I was going to say, I totally think that you have to use logic as well. I'm not saying to discount logic by any means. It's definitely a balance. But I do think at the same time, too, for us to follow our gut a little bit more, to follow, like Nelson said, he didn't feel that was the right place for him. It might have been where he ended up. But he took that as a learning moment and kind of followed his path and his direction and ended up somewhere that makes him happy. And he's probably way more successful because he's doing what he feels he's supposed to do. So I totally agree with you, Fred. I definitely think logic is very important. But I think if we, moving forward, there are so many, our climate crisis, there's various different things, the social injustices that we need to tackle. And the more that we can follow our gut and stay, really listen to that feeling and do what we feel passionate about, I think the more successful theoretically we can be, as a whole. So that would be.
But Stephanie, I agree with you. Go ahead, Alicia. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, I think the most important thing is to really define for yourself, what does success mean? So often people chase what other people have defined as success, a title, size of an organization, a bank account. And I think there's so much global learning that's coming out of the pandemic. But I think one is people are really starting to spend time thinking, what's really important to me? What do I really need? Mm-hmm. And what do I want? And what am I willing to do in order to get that? What, what gets me up in the morning? And I don't think it's an either or. I think you can have a very, lucrative, financially rewarding career doing something you love. You can also have a very financially rewarding career that kills you inside. And I think it's finding that right balance and really trying to shut out the noise and what other people tell you should want or should be chasing, and define that for yourself. And then I think the answers come a lot easier. And caveat, it was very easy for me to make the big, bold leap of walking away from a very senior level position to start my own business. I'd already hit my retirement financial goals. So easy for me to say, just follow your heart. But again, I think there are ways that you can do that without necessarily creating a bunch of financial risk for yourself. But thing one is understanding, what does success look like for me, and how do I structure my life in order to achieve that?
Yes, I agree. And it reminds me of one of my mom's expressions. She will say, pray for miracles, but tie your camel. And so I'm going to go sneak. And when Stephanie's at home doing what she does with her family and her husband, I'm sneaking to her office and I'm going to write in for the field, and I'm going to put a comma, but tie your camel. Does that work?
Writing that down. Pray for miracles, but tie your camel.
Tie your camel, you know what I mean? So that's what I think Fred was saying, the whole aspect of it's wonderful to dream. It's wonderful to want all these nice things, but be practical as well. Is that what you were saying, Fred?
Yeah, and at least this group, I mean, I think just by the feel where everyone's coming, and especially Nelson and Stephanie, and I come from, at least I'm not sure, where we had a pretty stable home environment, which is such a big advantage that we don't recognize. And as I went through my career and saw and did some of this stuff, two people that I grew an early respect for because I knew how much work it was a single parent and someone that went to school at night. And those people have just extra pressure, and for them to accomplish whatever they're going for, I often looked at my life. I've been married for 30 plus years, 35 plus years, and I see when I had raised my children, how different it would have been if they were in a divorce situation, and how much harder it is for just the parent, and also the experiences of the children, of what they become as they grow up. And that goes into your perspective and the decisions you make and what your goals are. And I think that from what I'm seeing from this group tonight is, you know, we've had that stability, and a lot of people don't have that. And that's where that emotional piece loses the practicality, because you don't have that background, or it wasn't taught to you in some cases. And that's where a lot of mistakes are made.
I agree. Why are you so passionate about student loan debt? Why this company, this direction?
Because it's crippling the future of a lot of people. People over the age of 50 right now are the fastest growing student debt holders, which is alarming. The career, most of these careers now require postgraduate degrees. Grad Plus loans are up 110% since 2014. And a lot of careers are requiring it. My daughter, I'll give you a perfect example. My oldest is a speech pathologist. And she's bilingual and works with special needs children. And what happened there is when I have two more daughters behind her. And when she made that decision, we knew she needed her master's. We had to have a heart-to-heart. Who's going to be paying for that? How are we going to do that? There's some practicality. We were so glad she picked it. It wasn't even, you know, we're talking about evolution and change. When she got out of high school, that wasn't even on our radar screen. And she found someone by going to a party, then shadowing. And these are the experiences I was talking about earlier, is getting that network together and finding what she loved, and she found her passion. And it's just marvelous. I mean, she killed us in another way, because she went to Mexico and did mission work for 15 months, and we didn't know if she was coming back. But that experience, and I'll tell you, we were wrong all the way through, that experience gave her a full ride for grad school that now she didn't have to worry about it. So, you know, life works out. Like, you play for the dreams, as you were talking about it. But, no, I was always tying the camel.
I like that, because let me tell you, I never tie the camel. What happens is I go to sleep, I wake up at 3 a.m. with the most brilliant idea I've ever thought of, and I just implement it. So that's why I got to be careful. I got to wait and talk to somebody before implementing my ideas. Nelson, one of the things you talked about early on in the show is that you like the idea of marketing because of the ideas and the creativity of it. When do you come up with your best ideas?
Walking and running, basically. So yeah, I like to run. So I go running most days. We're lucky enough to live in the beautiful English countryside. So I've got a lovely lake and forest really, really close to me. So that kind of quietness is where I do my best work, really. It's one of the reasons that I work for myself, because I can just get up and go whenever I like, and I'm always working. So I don't want to be paid just to do my thinking between 9 and 5, because actually I like having 2 hours, 3 hours off for lunch, and I might like working on the weekend. But so when I'm running, I don't wear like headphones or anything like that. I don't have any music. I just kind of enjoy being on my own, that kind of quite solitary time to think.
You come back with the best ideas. I love it. Now we are coming down to the last few minutes of the show. And what I love to do at the end of every show is just simply allow my guests the opportunity to speak directly to the audience, to everyone who is watching this show live, as well as everyone who is watching it from the archives, and simply let them know what you want them to take away from your appearance here today. And we're going to start with you, Stephanie.
So I genuinely started this company because I care how the people and the planet feel. And I want to do my part to make a difference. And actually, starting today, we are doing 15% off for consumers or customers, and 15% of all of our total sales we are using to pay it forward. So we are actually asking people to DM us or send an email to hello@forthefield.com with the name and story of a role model in their life. So a vet tech, a nurse, a postal worker, a social worker, anybody that is somebody that they look up to. And we want to take this time, because Thanksgiving, it's not all about sales. It shouldn't, it's about thanking people and giving back. So that's actually what I want to do during this time, and use our platform too, is to give back to the people making our world a better place every day. So you can use code give15 at forthefield.com, and also send us the names of some role models in your life. We'd love to pay it forward to them.
I think that's wonderful. Fred, what do you have for us?
So I just want to, appreciate the opportunity here to be here today with everyone. It's been very interesting and exciting, actually. But just visit PayFred. I mean, this is a gigantic problem that both parents and families and students are facing, and it's affecting their financial life. So the PayFred website has lots of content on there to help you make better college funding and student loan repayment decisions, loan forgiveness decisions, and just look at our cause and just join, sign up and go from there.
Thank you, Fred. Nelson, what do you have for us?
Well, we didn't get a chance to talk about it earlier just because we had so many great perspectives, and I really didn't want to interrupt. But I'm also the host of the Working From Home podcast. And if you liked this kind of roundtable approach, you'll also like the Working From Home podcast. Essentially, every week I interview somebody who is a remote worker, an entrepreneur, an online business owner, and talk about exactly what led them to where they are in their lives, their story. Alternatively, I get on experts to help people like me, help remote workers improve their happiness, improve their efficiency and productivity, and just generally kind of improve their life. So if you liked what you heard today, then head over to the Working From Home podcast, available wherever you listen to your podcasts.
See, Nelson, that's why we give everyone a few minutes at the end of the show so they can get out what's most important to them. And in reading your bio, that was one of the main things I wanted to ask you about. So thank you for providing that information. I hope we see Sharifa Hardy on an episode of one of your shows soon. Also, when did you start Working From Home podcast?
The podcast is actually kind of 2 months old now. I've been planning it for a long time. We've got 20 plus episodes already pre-recorded, and we're just releasing them every week.
Okay, I just wondered, because people always have that defining moment, like is pre-COVID or during COVID. So I was just kind of interested because, I've been doing this for years. I've been like yourself, I've been working from home for years. So I'm just used to it. I don't really notice it until I actually go out the house. I go to a store or do something. I'm like, oh my God, yes, the mask. And each and every time I forget my mask in the car. And then I go back to the car, get the mask, and go back into the store. So I definitely wanted to talk about that. We'll talk more, Nelson. Alicia, what do you have for us?
Well, anyone who's feeling stuck, who's feeling that sort of low grade dread, who doesn't feel like the path they're on is the right one, or they might be on the right path, but there's something that's missing. It doesn't have to be that way. The answers are inside you, and really spend some time thinking about what's important, what does success look like for me. And if you would like to learn more, you can go to my website, which is adaugherty.com, and just read about what I'm up to in terms of helping people become better leaders and find their path.
Yes, absolutely. Or they can buy the tickets for your session for the New Year, New You 2-day teleconference. It is going to be so amazing and enlightening. We'll see Alicia there. We'll see so many different presenters there for different ways for you to be a new you in the new year, not only for your business, but your personal life. So many presenters. It's going to be interesting. So I want to thank you all for being a guest on today's episode of the Roundtable Talk Show. And I especially want to thank everyone who tuned in to watch this show live, as well as everyone who is watching it in the archives. Just because you didn't catch the live show doesn't mean you are not important. We still appreciate your support. We appreciate you tuning in. We appreciate you sharing the show. But please, whether you caught it live or in the archives, don't just watch the show. Don't just share the show. Please support our guests. Visit their websites. Follow them on social media. Send them a message, tweet, inbox, connect on LinkedIn. But when you send that message, please let them know Sharifa Hardy says hi. Now, if you're interested in more ways that I can help your business, Or maybe you want to be a guest on the Roundtable Talk Show. Please visit my website at asksharifa.com. Until Monday morning at the same time, 8 a.m. Pacific, everyone have a safe and a blessed weekend. Bye now.